Welcome to the Path of the Power Couple. This is the first webinar that I, Aleya Dow, and my husband, Doug Noll, are going to be doing. It is a 5-webinar series where we are sharing all of the tools of how to create and maintain healthy, beloved, intimate relationships. And we're just going to start off with Doug sharing a little bit about who he is, and then me, who I am, and why we're doing this webinar series. Doug, go ahead.
Well, first of all, it should be obvious that Aleya is my wife and we're married. I guess you could describe my work generally as a sophisticated peacemaker. I'm a lawyer and was a trial lawyer for 22 years. I went back to school, obtained my master's degree in peacemaking and conflict studies, and became a full-time mediator and peacemaker in 2000. And since that time, have not only mediated thousands of disputes, but have also developed a unique set of listening skills that allows anybody to calm an angry person in 90 seconds or less. And that led in 2010 with my colleague Laurel Coffer, co-founding the Prison of Peace Project. And since 2010, we have been training incarcerated populations in maximum security prisons around the world how to stop prison violence by using the mediation, peacemaking, and de-escalation techniques that both of us have developed over the years. And started off very small, and today it's quite a significant project. The only other thing I'll say about the Prison of Peace Project is that here in California, we have had over 6,000 of our students released on parole. Not one of them is reoffended, and we're quite proud of that. We really do believe that the type of training that we offer to that population is transformative. And you're going to get the benefit of some of that, because a lot of what Aleya and I teach and talk about are the things that we incorporated in the Prison of Peace Project. I'll also say that I facilitate difficult conversations, and I teach and train and coach people in deep empathic listening skills. Aleya?
I am a doctor of Oriental Medicine, and I actually started off on the path of being a healer right around the age of 21 when I went to massage school, and then I became a Reiki master, and then I went and got my master's in Oriental Medicine and in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And then I moved after school, graduating from my master's degree from the Southwest Acupuncture School in Santa Fe. I moved to Telluride, Colorado, where I opened the first alternative healing clinic in Telluride. And we had about 16 healers working under one roof, which was like herding cats. It was a very interesting experience. I learned a tremendous amount about leadership and how I wasn't a good leader at that time, and about management, and I wasn't good at management at that time. And so basically feet in the fire with intense relationship dynamics with a bunch of healers, and then also being an acupuncturist, having a private practice. And then I started, I had my practice in Telluride, Colorado, and I then opened up another practice in Santa Barbara, California. And I commuted for 7 years back and forth between Telluride and Santa Barbara. And one of the reasons why I opened up an office in Santa Barbara was because the dolphins and the whales would show up in dream time and lured me in my dreams when I was in Telluride to Santa Barbara, and kept having dreams about my partner and seeing that he was in California, got that information. So essentially for a year and a half, followed my dreams and found Doug, who lived in Clovis, Fresno, California at the time, or just on the outskirts. And we met in 2004. And then I opened up a practice in Fresno, Clovis, and we have been together navigating life, learning about relationships, growing, evolving, expanding. I started an internet business in 2005, and then began the Daily Cups in 2009, and then started the Cups of Consciousness in 2011. And I've written a book, 7 Cups of Consciousness, and produced 9 sound healing albums, and have produced over 2,000 meditations online, and have a one-on-one practice as well, and have trained up about 15 to 20 practitioners who use my modality of the 7 Cups of Consciousness using energetic tools. And so as a healer, teacher, budding author, I am all about gathering the tools and explaining the how. And Doug and I have been crafting tools around relationship, connection, intimacy, and really encouraging each other to be our best selves. And we often reflect upon, God, if we could just teach this to others. And he and I do it in our own unique way, in our own private practices. And in your training, Doug, you do it in your books and in the prison work and in all of the coaching and the consulting that you do with individuals. But he and I have been going back and forth of creating this process of sharing the tools together in a format where you get Doug style, Aleya style. I'm not going to be bringing in energetic practices, but maybe meditative practices, so that no matter where somebody is in their beliefs, their perceptions, their level of self-awareness, they can take these tools and start shifting their relationship with themselves and then shifting relationships with others.
So why are we doing these webinars? We recognize that we have a very unique relationship. If you can imagine, we never fight or argue. We rarely have upset. That doesn't mean that one or the other of us doesn't have days when we're frustrated or anxious or feeling emotions, but we do not have, we don't have the kind of upset that we witness many other couples having.
We don't have messy moments with each other. We have messy moments inside ourselves, but
Yep.
not with each other.
And so we thought that it might be a service to share how we have developed all of this and how we have developed our relationship as a power couple, because we are a power couple. What was the path that we took to get to where we are? And if you are interested in the kind of relationship that we have, how can you follow in our path? And so that was the sort of the origin of this idea. And we're offering it for free because this is knowledge we want everybody to have. And hopefully this will benefit from you. So let's just do a quick check-in with everybody.
Well, before we do that, let's give the definition of the power couple. So what's your definition of a power couple?
Well, I would say the definition of a power couple is a couple who the individuals in the couple are in themselves extremely powerful. They're self-confident, they're emotionally competent, they're at the height of their professional abilities, they are financially secure, and their energies are directed towards service to others rather than distracted by fights and arguments and upset and messiness.
And my definition of a power couple is two people who are in relationship with each other, intimate relationship with each other, and they are encouraging themselves and their partner to be their best self without being attached or responsible. You are holding a container for the bloom of the best version of you. And so it's this constant state of encouragement for yourself, encouragement for the person that you feel love for.
Okay, so shall we get started?
Yes. And you said you wanted to do a quick little check-in
That's
with
right.
people.
Thank you. So I'd like, for all of you who are attending here, I'd like you to put a 1 in the box if you feel like your relationship is not what you would like it to be. Put a 1 in the box.
And if you want to do it privately, you can just do it with host and panelist.
Or you don't even have to do it at all. You can do it whatever you want. So we got a lot of 1s. And it's not surprising. That's right. We're talking about, your total family relationship. So it could be your relationship with your spouse or your partner. It could be a relationship with your kids. It could be a relationship with your adult kids.
It could be relationships with your parents too.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So in a moment, I'm going to kind of give you an overview of what we're going to be talking about over the next 5 sessions. But before that, I want to spend a few minutes talking about why is it that this is so difficult to achieve? Why is it so difficult to be in a relationship that is not a power relationship, where there's a lot of messiness and upset and arguments and fights, and in really bad cases, estrangement, or relationships become transactional rather than intimate. In my opinion, and this is my opinion, it has a lot to do with what we experience in a relationship as children. Because we are generally, there is no formal education for how to be in a relationship. There should be, in my opinion, but there isn't. There's no formal education about how to develop the skills that we're going to be talking about. And so as a result, your education about relationship is what you grew up with. And there was a very famous family therapist and psychologist by the name of Virginia Satir, who in the 1980s said that 96% of all families are emotionally dysfunctional. And then somebody else said, and the other 4% are lying. But the truth is that most families, many families, are emotionally dysfunctional. And so it's very, very, very difficult to develop a mature relationship that is emotionally secure and emotionally safe if you've never been exposed to that kind of environment. And so if you grew up in an emotionally unsafe family, you don't know how to be emotionally safe with yourself or with anybody else. And as a consequence, you carry the same problems that you saw in childhood forward into your relationships. And yeah, it's a trained incapacity. Thorsten Veblen, thank you very much. It's a trained incapacity.
And also, can I just add a layer in there that when we're watching our parents do something at a biological level, we interpret that what our parents are doing and their patterns, that's how you're supposed to be because that's safe.
Right.
And so when you start thinking about doing something differently, it triggers all of this biology inside you of no, new pattern, not safe. And so we have to fight against that fear of this isn't safe when we start bringing in a new, healthier, way safer way of being.
Right. Okay. So with that, what we're going to do in this 5-webinar series is give you five tools. I'm going to pull this over here so I can work with it. We're going to give you 5 tools to help you break that cycle, to break the cycle of what you learned in your family of origin that probably is the root cause of a lot of the unhappiness you may be experiencing in your relationships today. So the first concept, which we're going to talk about tonight, is honor the emotions. And I'm going to introduce you to a skill that those of you who know me know that I teach a lot, called affect labeling. And we're also going to introduce the idea of the Buddha bubble. And this is the foundational skill of life. And I'm only going to be able to spend about a half an hour on it. It's just enough to get you, just to teach you, introduce the idea that this is a tool that works. If you want to learn this skill and really master it, we can provide resources for you to do that. You're not going to master it tonight, but at least you'll know about it.
And do you want to do an overview of the 5 concepts before you dive into the affect labeling?
I'm doing
Perfect.
that.
Perfect.
So the first concept is honoring the emotions. The second concept that Aleya will be talking about in the next seminar will be how to meet your own needs. Because if you rely on other people to meet your needs externally, you will never be able to have an intimate relationship, because you will always feel betrayed. You will always have crushed expectations. And the way you get around that is by making sure that you meet all your own needs. And Aleya will talk about that. Then in the third seminar, we're going to talk about relationship patterns and programming. And I'm going to dive a little deeper into childhood programming and how childhood programming really screws us up for relationships. It's really sad. Somebody at 12 years old should sit us down and say, you know, all that stuff we taught you over the last 12 years, well, it was okay when you were 2 years old, but it doesn't work anymore as a 12-year-old. So we got to teach you some more sophisticated stuff. Unfortunately,
new patterns.
And learn new patterns. And unfortunately, nobody does that. Then the fourth concept in the fourth webinar is going to be how to cultivate self-love, self-worth, and resilience. And Aleya and I will both be talking about this. The principle here is that you can only be loved by somebody else to the degree that you love yourself. If you have low self-worth or low self-love, then you're not going to be loved very much. and you're not going to find somebody that's really going to cherish you.
And
So
really hard to love another when you don't have a lot of authentic love for your own self.
that's correct. You can only love somebody else to the degree that you love yourself. You can only be loved to the degree that you love yourself. So cultivating self-love, self-worth, and resilience is a critical part of being on the path of the power couple. And then the last concept, which we will cover in the last webinar, is the importance of gratitude and witnessing the essence. And when you live in gratitude, it really doesn't matter what your financial condition is or your health, although it's nice to have money and it's pretty important to have good health. But as long as you're grateful for what you do have, you don't become resentful. And resentment is one of the killers of any relationship.
And
So
resentment also builds with those needs when you have these needs and you're looking for the partner to meet the needs that we talk
that's
about in
right.
the second webinar.
That's right. So the concepts are learning how to honor emotions, learning how to meet your own needs, learning about relationship patterns and programming and how to reprogram all that, cultivating self-love, self-worth, and resilience, and exercising gratitude every day are the key secrets to this. So there's a note out here. I got to read this. This is really nice. Thank you, Rosa. Please, Doug, I want all the resources you can give to us here in Costa Rica in mediation trainings. You are famous for this technique, emotional reflection, affect labeling, micro-intervention, as you say. Well, that's nice to know. I'm having an influence around the world. All right, so let's jump into emotions and affect labeling. One of the things that Aleya and I have discovered is that even when there's no upset, one of the things that happens every morning, our morning routine is this. We get up, we make coffee, we go outside and we sit in our hot tub, assuming the weather is not crazy like it's been in California the last 2 months. We sit in the hot tub and watch the sun come up and we talk. And one of the things that we ask each other is, how are you feeling? Now, most of the time, you're just out of bed, you're still kind of half awake, and you really don't, there isn't a lot of emotional stuff going on. But the question causes us to
do an inner check-in.
Do an inner check-in. Am I anxious? Am I excited? Am I happy? Am I content? And it's just that check-in that becomes very important, because here's the thing: we are 98% emotional and only 2% rational.
But interestingly, when we started that practice, it initially created anxiety for you.
It did.
Because it was doing this check-in with emotions, and people have been trained that we just should always feel good. And if we're not feeling good and somebody asks us how we're feeling, then we start to feel anxiety because of those emotions. And so we immediately get defensive. And so there's a whole repatterning that needs to happen in order to create a safe container so that you can ask people questions, because part of this affect labeling is you never ask questions.
Right.
So part of the evolution.
Part of it too is that when you are not aware of your emotions, you don't have emotional self-awareness. When somebody asks you how you're feeling, you get anxious because you can't answer the question. And you feel incompetent. I don't know what I'm feeling.
And then you get defensive.
And then you get defensive. So question is, where did the 98.2% come from? That comes from a neuroscientist, MD, a guy by the name of Damasio, who's written a bunch of books. He's now at USC, and Antonio Damasio. And you can find his books on Amazon. And he will talk about this emotions, the somatic body, how memory and self are created, and he's the one that really talks about emotionality. But if you look at other neuroscience research, you'll find that most neuroscientists pretty much agree that everything we do is emotional. I mean, if you really think about it this way: how can you make a decision, or rather, how can you invoke critical thinking or rational thinking or logic or reasoning? How can you invoke any of those cognitive tools unless you have an emotional reaction to the environment that tells you that you have a problem? Rationality by itself does not alert you to what's going on around you. It is a process for solving a problem or making a decision. But what makes us recognize that we have a problem or a decision are our emotions. Likewise, if you want to get deep into the neuroscience, at the final point where the last two neurons have to click to say yes or no to a decision, the decision is based on this simple algorithmic formula. Is this going to give me more or less pleasure, or is this going to allow me to avoid more or less pain? So we're either going to seek pleasure or we're going to avoid pain. Those are both emotional decisions. So even the most critical thinking decision, the most difficult, rational, business, mathematical decision, it's going to come down to how's it going to make us feel.
And it's also one of the reasons why we don't want to make really important decisions when we are emotionally triggered, because then we actually don't have that 2% of that part of
Right.
our brain that helps
Right.
us make clear decisions.
Right. So that's about as much of the neuroscience I'll get into. Well, maybe there's a little bit more. So what's the fundamental tool that we use for dealing with emotions, our own emotions and the emotions of others? The tool is called affect, AFFECT, labeling, affect labeling. And it's a 3-step process. When you are either emotional yourself, you're experiencing emotion, or your partner is experiencing emotion, the first thing you want to do is label those emotions. So you're going to do this in a 3-step process. Number one, you're going to ignore the words. Doesn't matter what your partner says, ignore the words. You're not ignoring your partner. You're just ignoring what they're saying, because those words in this moment are no longer important.
And you might even have to have an inner mantra of ignore the words,
That's
ignore
right.
the words,
Especially
ignore
if
the
there's
words.
anger or upset, strong emotions.
Or blame or shame.
You have to really ignore the words. Second step is you're going to read their emotional data. Emotions are data, just like numbers on a spreadsheet. And the beauty is that our brains are hardwired to read other people's emotions effortlessly and efficiently. This goes back to evolutionary biology. What most people don't realize is that we humans did not have the ability, we had no vocabulary, no ability to speak or utter words until about 230,000 years ago. But hominids have been on the planet for millions of years. How did they communicate? In clans and families, how do they communicate?
Grunts and energetic awareness.
And emotions, facial expressions and body language.
And
grunts with
empathic
different
sensitivity.
intonations and empathic sensitivity. So our brains evolved in order to cooperate and collaborate and work together in groups. We evolved this really sensitive ability to read what other people were experiencing long before, millions of years before we ever had the ability to speak or utter words. We still have that ability today. The problem is, because of Western culture, which puts a privilege on rationality over emotions, we are taught not to pay attention to emotions. Emotions are bad. Emotions are evil. They're irrational. They make you weak. They make you vulnerable. You can be exploited.
You give your power away if you feel
You
emotion.
give your power. That's right. You give your power. Actually, all of that is completely and totally false. It's the opposite is true. And I'll just stop there, and I'll say the way I learned this was it was a long, hard lesson for me. But for many years, I studied martial arts. I became a second-degree black belt, and then I started studying Tai Chi. And in Tai Chi, as a martial art, there are two paradoxes. The first is the softer you are, the stronger you are. The more vulnerable you are, the more powerful you are. Soft to be strong, vulnerable to be powerful. And so people think that emotions are soft and vulnerable, but they don't realize the Tai Chi paradox, that that's exactly what makes you strong and powerful. And eventually, I understood the paradox, and that's when when I did understand it, that's when I left the practice of law and went back to school and changed course. All right, so we're ignoring the words, We're reading the emotions. The technique for reading the emotions is very simple. All you do is empty your mind, just be really quiet. Don't think. Try not to think. Get thoughts out of your head just for a couple of seconds, and just be in the presence of your upset partner. And all of a sudden, emotions will start flowing into your consciousness. It just happens automatically. And I'm going to give you a tool in a minute that makes it even easier. And then the third step is to reflect back the emotions with a you statement. No I statements, no questions. You're going to say something like, oh, you're really frustrated. You're really angry. And there's a way to do this that we'll get to in just a second. So ignore the words.
Read the emotions.
Read the emotions. Reflect back the emotions with you statement. So Aleya, let's do a quick demo.
Okay.
Give me something that you've had a couple of things going on. You want to talk about one of those? Maybe not.
Yeah, do the you're stressed. So like you're gonna affect label me.
Yeah. So Aleya, you've felt a lot of stress, and you've been frustrated and anxious and concerned.
Yes, and I'm confused.
And you've been very confused.
And I don't know what to do.
You felt, you're confused, you're anxious, you don't know what to do.
I'm anxious.
You're anxious, you feel a little disempowered.
I'm scared.
And it's scaring you.
And I don't feel safe.
You don't feel safe.
I don't feel safe.
You don't feel safe.
And I just want to run.
You feel like running because you're frightened, you're scared.
Yeah.
And that's because of the anxiety you're feeling.
Yes.
And there are times when you don't feel lovable.
Maybe not that deep, just more scared. Scared of not being safe.
You're scared of not being safe. You're scared of not having control.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, you're scared of not having control.
That's
been stressing you out.
Yes, I love control.
You love control. Okay, good. All right, so what did you all observe? Just put a couple of words in the chat about what you just saw me do. Reflecting back, good.
And try looking right just above the webcam a little bit.
The cam is above my camera. If I'm looking up at the camera, I'm going to be looking like that, and that won't work.
That's too
That's
high,
right.
yeah.
You've got me as good as I'm going to be.
Perfect. And no judgment, validated feelings, acknowledging stress, confusion.
Calm, right?
You're not fixing it. Shoulders dropped, side.
Right.
Very attentive. Witnessing.
Did anybody feel like I was being rude or intrusive by reflecting? Yep, there's one yes. Good. All right. Let me talk about that, because that almost always is an observation that somebody has. There are two ways of communicating. One is conversation, which we all know, and the other is listening. The rules of conversation say don't interrupt, but the rules of listening are completely different. As long as you're using a you statement and you're reflecting emotions, you want to interrupt as much as you can, and the speaker will feel deeply heard and validated. This is counterintuitive to everything we think we know about listening. And that's why you have to be taught how to do this, because you would never figure it out on your own. I mean, I stumbled on it by accident. I had a brilliant flash of insight in a very difficult mediation back in 2005. So one of the challenges in learning how to affect label is overcoming the fear that you're being rude or condescending or patronizing or manipulative by telling somebody what they're feeling. And I find that in teaching this, that's the biggest hurdle that people have to overcome, is just having the courage to say you feel or you are.
That is the hardest part about this work.
That's the hardest
The
part.
hardest.
And the way you get around it is by practice. And I'll talk for a moment about how you practice this.
And you can use love. You think, I really love this person. I really love my partner. I really love my child. I really love my parent and my friend. And if I really love them, I can do the most loving thing for them by validating their emotions. And there was something that was really interesting that happened, because Doug and I actually haven't done this process in the last 3 or 4 days of him just validating my emotions like that. And when somebody's stressed, when they're upset, they don't have access to, and I might be saying this inaccurately, so Doug, correct me, they don't have access to their prefrontal cortex.
Right.
I don't know how I'm feeling. I know I'm off, but I don't really know how I'm feeling. So by him defining my emotions and telling me the emotions, I go inside and go, is that true or not true? And then I find a deeper truth of, oh yeah, that's true. Or I go deeper and I find something different. And then he actually helped me find something that I hadn't even considered.
Okay. So a lot of people, there have been a lot of interesting questions popping up. So let's answer some of those questions, and then we'll keep developing this a little further. So let me scroll back up here.
And there's another thing that happens when he positively affect labeled me. He didn't have to be right. I could correct him and say, no, I'm actually frustrated, or no, I'm not really feeling unloved. But then when he did do it and finally got to the, yeah, it's about the control, I literally felt my prefrontal cortex come back online. There was a shift in my brain and my brain chemistry. And now there's like tingling on the forehead.
Right. So let me stop right there and say there are brain scanning studies that show why this technique works. We can actually see what's going on in the human brain. And the seminal study was published in 2007. And there have been 9 studies that have followed it so far. I haven't checked the last year or 2 to see if there are other ones, but they're all coming out of Matthew Lieberman's lab at UCLA. And basically what the studies show is that when you label emotions, you inhibit the emotional centers of the brain, the emotional circuits, primarily the amygdala and related emotional circuits in the brain. And at the same time, you activate a part of the brain called the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, which is the executive function of the brain. Now, there are reasons why this all works, which I'm not going to bother you going into the great detail of it tonight. But the essence is that you're lending your prefrontal cortex to your partner who's upset for the 90 seconds it takes for the emotions to go down and for the right ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, the executive function of the brain, to turn back on again. And every human, you cannot stop this from happening. If somebody's affect labeling you, you're going to calm down. You have no choice, because our brains are hardwired for this. That's why this works on every human brain on the planet. It doesn't matter your culture, your language, your ethnicity, none of that matters.
But sometimes people can get more emotionally upset while they're getting affect labeled, because they're feeling safe to actually start processing their emotions, because somebody's actually listening and validating their emotional experience.
So that's right. 2 things can happen. The 2 things can happen that are not common, but they do happen. One is that I start affect labeling Aleya, and she gets even more excited. So maybe she's really angry. So I could say something like, I could say, oh, Aleya, you're really frustrated. No, I say, Aleya, oh, man, Aleya, you're really pissed off. You're really angry. And she says, no, I'm not pissed off. I'm frustrated. Now she's echoed up, right? She ratcheted up, and I'll come in right underneath her and I'll say, oh, yeah, you're really frustrated. Yeah. And you don't feel heard. You don't feel supported. And I'll go on through all the list. And then I'll say, and you're really angry. And she'll say, yeah, I'm really angry. Right. So you're never wrong when you affect label. That's the first thing to understand. If somebody says no, they just can't access their emotional database. So they don't know what they're feeling, and they're going to say no. You just stick with it. Maybe they'll correct you, maybe they won't, and you just keep going. And eventually they'll calm down enough to be able to recognize their feeling, and they'll say yes.
And if they start to go into story and they start cycling on the story, interrupt them with and that's upsetting to you, or that was really frustrating for you, and you felt disrespected and you don't feel heard. Because people can sometimes run on a story as a way of deflecting, right?
Well, That's called blocking, but that's a more advanced
Something
topic that we
different.
probably should take up right now.
Okay.
I know we want to give out so much information, but I'm trying to keep this really basic and simple. So the other thing that can happen is you can get pushback. Who do you think you are, my psychotherapist? Don't do that stuff on me, right? You'll get that. When that happens, which doesn't happen very often, pat yourself on the back because you did a great job. The problem is you were too good. We all surround ourselves with these big walls to protect our emotions and our emotional vulnerability. This starts at about 6 to 8 years old when we start learning that we live in an emotionally unsafe world, and we start building up walls around us. And when you affect label somebody, especially if you're a little clumsy, you're going to be like a superhero powering through all those walls, seeing that person for who they really are, and it's going to scare the crap out of them. And that's when you're going to get the pushback. And the solution there is to stop and say, I'm sorry, back off, give it 15 minutes, and then come back and affect label again. But this time, do it conversationally with just one emotion, like, oh, really frustrated.
More casual.
Don't make it more casual, make it more subtle, more nuanced, and just one emotion.
And you could even play with like, oh, so frustrating, as opposed to,
again, that's more advanced than we need to get into tonight. We're just trying to cover the basics here. There are a lot of subtle, nuanced techniques that we teach that unfortunately we don't have the time to get into it, but I just want to kind of give you the overview. All right, so you don't ask questions. You would never say something like, are you angry? Oh, you're angry? Are you angry? No, never ask a question. Never use an I statement when you're affect labeling. When you're affect labeling a third person.
Right.
You use, now we're talking about third person affect labeling. You can also affect label yourself. And that's when you do use an I statement. You would say to yourself, I'm really angry. I'm frustrated. I don't feel heard. I feel ignored, unappreciated. And then you can affect label. And it's the same thing. When you affect label yourself, you'll actually start calming yourself down. So you don't need the trust of the other person in order to be effective at this. There's no trust involved here at all. This is all a biophysiological reaction of the brain listening to this kind of information. It's hard neuroscience, and it works like crazy. I have taught this in maximum security prisons to people serving a life sentences without possibility of parole, all the way up to the Congressional Budget Office, where I've taught senior analysts how to de-escalate members of Congress and staff. It works everywhere without fail. Okay, a couple of the questions. Shouldn't you ask her, do you feel blank? No, I think we've answered that question. What would happen if Aleya blamed you for something? Like, I'm stressed and it's your fault. All right, how do you not get triggered and keep calm? That's why you ignore the words.
And Buddha bubble.
Well, I'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
I haven't forgotten. You ignore the words. So let's do a quick role play here, Aleya. So let's do this again. This time you start blaming me and I'll affect label you. So I'm all stressed out and it's your fault and you're not doing it. Whatever, say whatever you want.
All right.
Okay.
I'm going to make something up that's not real.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Doug, when you don't take out the trash and do the dishes, then I don't have enough time to tend to Emmy and fill the hummingbird feeders. And it just feels like you don't respect my time.
So you don't feel respected. You don't feel appreciated. You don't feel supported.
I feel like you're not my priority. Like I'm not a priority for you. You just take me for granted.
You feel like you're unappreciated. You're being taken for granted.
Yeah.
That you're not a priority. So you feel unloved and abandoned.
And that your time's more important.
And you feel like my time is the perception you have is that you're not important and your time is not important.
Yeah.
And it makes you sad.
Yeah.
And upset.
Yeah.
And distressed.
Yeah.
And you feel abandoned and all alone.
Yeah.
And unloved.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that hurts.
It's scary.
It's scary.
Sad.
It's bad.
Yeah. Unloved.
Unloved. Okay, so you see how she blames me, but I ignore it. I just ignore it. All I do is reflect what she's experiencing. 99% of the time, somebody's blaming you for something you didn't do. And your immediate knee-jerk reaction is to fight back. I'm going to fight to be right.
And even if you did do something, it's never about it. It's they want to get something inside themselves. They're just using you to try to get a need, which we'll talk about in the second
Yeah, they need
webinar.
they need to be validated. And that's why when somebody gets upset at you and they're yelling at you, you never apologize, you never rationalize, you
Never
never
ask
justify,
or forgiveness. Never
you
ask
never
for
ask
forgiveness.
forgiveness, you never try to explain yourself, you never try to argue your point, never do that stuff,
Never defend.
never defend,
And you
ever.
and you might
Stop it.
have and you might have to have literally this inner mantra of, I can't defend, not defending, I'm not defending. Listen to the emotions, read the data field.
Yeah.
Just this
Yeah.
constant inner mantra to get
Yeah.
you in this new groove. And so
Right.
by writing these steps down and doing this inner mantra the next time you're in a moment with
Right.
somebody.
And remember that when you start APIC labeling, many times the feelings are going to escalate and escalate and escalate. They're going to get stronger. And you stick with it. Don't give up. Keep APIC labeling. And so right now, I want to give you a quick tool. So if you're at a place where you can get out a pad of paper and a pencil, I want to give you a secret. This is the deep secret that Doug has developed. And it's called emotional layering. And what I've learned is that it's very difficult for people in the beginning to be able to grab onto the emotions and then reflect them back because it's unstructured data. And our brains don't do well with unstructured data. And emotions are unstructured. We've never been trained how to structure the data. So now I'm going to give you the structure. So on the left-hand side of the paper, I want you to write down these 6 emotions on the left side. Anger, disrespect, they're just down, just on a column. Anger, disrespect, fear, shame, sadness, and abandonment. And then go back to the top of the column. The first word is anger. To the right of anger, write these words out. Frustration, annoyance, irritation, rage. So you can see anger comes in all kinds of different flavors. Then the next line is disrespect. So you're going to write not being heard or unheard or not being listened to, ignored, being treated unfairly, not being supported, not being appreciated. Next line down are the fear emotions. So you got fear, and then anxious or anxiety, worried, or concerned, terrified, scared. The next line down is shame. So it would be shame, humiliation, embarrassment, and guilt. The next line down is sadness. So it would be sadness, grief, depressed, upset, distressed, unhappy. And the last layer, which is where the gold is abandonment, rejected, unloved, betrayed, and unlovable. Now, the way you're going to use this, these are 6 layers of emotions. The way you're going to use this is to start with what is most obvious to you. What's the emotion that's most obvious? If it's almost always with an angry person, it's going to be anger. So you'd start off and you'd say, you're really angry, and you just watch the reaction. And you'd say, you're really angry and you're really pissed off. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out, okay, so now they're angry. Typically, the easiest way is just to go down through the layers. So just listen to me as I show you how to use it. So you're really angry and you're really pissed off. You feel completely disrespected. Nobody's listening to you. You feel ignored. You feel unappreciated and unsupported, and it's just really unfair. Next layer. And you're really anxious and concerned and worried and even a little scared. Next layer. And you feel a little embarrassed and humiliated. Next layer. And it makes you sad and distressed and upset and unhappy. And the last layer, and you feel completely abandoned, unloved, and rejected. And you feel like you're completely unlovable and worthless. And the whole thing just really makes you angry. You see how simple that is? And that's all you have to do. That's all the vocabulary that you need to make this work. And you can just see how it kind of rolls off me. Obviously, I've done this a lot, so I got it pretty well learned. But that's what you need to do too.
And Doug, can you repeat the shame? I think with the fear, we need a few repeats. So we've got the fear, anxious, anxiety, worried, concerned, terrified, scared. What's the shame one? And I'm just going to jot them down and then I'm going to share it in the chat room.
Shame, humiliation, embarrassment, and guilt.
Okay. And then the next one.
Then the next one is
grief.
sadness, grief, upset, distressed, depressed, unhappy.
And then just check some of the comments.
I am. So here's a comment. I have a friend who disappeared in a love relationship. On reconnecting, she kept responding with, "I hear you are angry." Do not do that. That is the old active listening crap that does not work. Never has worked, never will work. It's based on,
and it just triggers us.
It just gets people triggered. It's based on it's based on psychologist Thomas Gordon's work in the 1950s. He was a professor and mentee of Carl Rogers at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He came up with a way of listening. He called it active listening. He was the first guy to coin that word in 1956, but his work has been completely misinterpreted and misunderstood. And yet, even though it doesn't work, it's still taught in psychology and therapy schools and mediation schools. I have colleagues of mine at Pepperdine that still teach this skill. I can't believe it. And they will not break out because they don't understand why active listening doesn't work because they haven't done the research. And two, I mean, I don't know. I guess they just teach what they're comfortable with. But active listening doesn't work. Never, ever, ever use an I statement. Here's the way we talk about it in the prison. We talk about, if you can imagine my arms, two train tracks. Here's the speaker's train track. Here's my train track. I want to always listen from the speaker's frame of reference. So I want to be on the speaker's track. If I start using I statements, I'm going to be picking the speaker's locomotive off and putting it onto my track. Now it's my train, not the speaker's train.
Now it has to do all about you instead of the person that you're in the presence of.
It's all about me. And the other reason that people use I statements is because they're afraid of the vulnerability and intimacy that using a you statement creates between you and your partner. And so they will use an I statement as a self-protective passive voice mechanism to soothe themselves. All wrong.
And there's the way that we're formulating and creating this whole 5 webinar series is each module that we're teaching gives you the skill set to be able to affect label. So you cultivate awareness of your needs, meeting responsibility inside, holding responsibility for your needs, cultivating more self-love, self-worth, more self-confidence. That enables you to then do the affect labeling. So right now today, if you're like, I can't do this. Well, today, maybe not, but just start affect labeling yourself with I am feeling, but go ahead.
The way to practice this is to not do this on your partners. I mean, I see that we've got couples in here and you guys could probably practice. If you're here together and you got it, you can practice. Just role play like Aleya and I did. Just make stuff up and practice. But the best way to practice this is to go to Starbucks. And when you're ordering, or any coffee house, and whenever you're ordering your coffee and you hand your credit card to the barista, say, "Hey, you look really happy today. Hey, you look really happy today." Smile and watch. And you're going to get a reaction. I'm not going to tell you what the reaction is. You're going to have to go figure it out for yourself. And you just do this day after day after day. And you do it at Starbucks, you do it at Sprouts or Whole Foods checkout, you do it at the restaurant to the server, you affect label the server one emotion. And you do this 10, 15, 20, 30 times until you start seeing the same reaction over and over again. And then all of a sudden you start to build confidence. Hey, this really does work. People really love to have their emotions listened to. It's not rude, it's not weird. They love it. And then you start doing it on some friends. And then you can
yeah.
slowly move it into your relationship.
And you can affect label positive emotions. Absolutely.
Right. And you can always do positive emotions.
And you can affect label your pets and your children.
That's right. Questions. Do we always go in that order? No, you go in the order of whatever presents. So maybe somebody's really anxious. You'd start with anxiety. Or maybe they're really sad. You'd start with sadness.
But we might not go right to abandonment and feeling unloved.
No, that's that one you got to be careful about. What happens if someone is still really angry? You keep affect labeling until, well, my rule is this: you affect label for 90 seconds. And if they aren't calmed down in 90 seconds, then you got to drop it. Now, as you get better at it, you can stick it with it longer. I've affect labeled for as long as 5 or 10 minutes before. But in the beginning, go for 90 seconds. And if it's not working, just stop and give it a break. Partly it's just skill level. It's getting the skill level developed. But eventually they will calm down. They cannot help themselves. When you really master affect labeling, you will calm any angry person. You will stop fights and arguments forever in your life. You will never have a fight or argument in your life again.
And Doug,
no matter how bad somebody wants to pick on you, it just won't happen.
What happens if you get anxious while you're affect labeling?
Ignore the words. When you learn how to ignore the words, you're going to we're going to talk about the Buddha bubble here. This is probably a great place. So one of the tools that Aleya and I developed early on in the relationship is what we call the Buddha bubble. We don't use it much anymore because we don't need it, but it's a really handy tool. And when you're in the Buddha bubble, you are agreeing with yourself that you're going to be non-reactive, non-critical, and non-judgmental.
And no fixing.
No fixing, no problem solving. All you can do is listen to emotions and reflect them. That's all you can do. And you're in the Buddha bubble. And it doesn't matter how the other person reacts or what they say, because you're impervious to anything they might say, because you're inside the Buddha bubble, where you're in a totally calm, powerful space. And you're in complete control of yourself. And when you picture the Buddha bubble, where I'm going to be non-reactive, non-critical, non-judgmental, I'm not going to fix a problem solve or do anything like that. All I'm going to do is listen. That helps a lot to control your reactivity, because you're giving yourself conscious permission to not react to what the other person is saying. So the Buddha bubble is a really excellent exercise for developing. And sometimes we will say to each other, hey, can you be in the Buddha bubble for a second? If we think it's going to be maybe a difficult, challenging conversation for some reason, I need you to be in the Buddha bubble. Okay, I'm there. And then
and you might have to again do a silent mantra of I'm in the Buddha bubble, I'm in the Buddha bubble, I'm in the Buddha bubble. And if you don't like the word Buddha bubble, call it your gentle bubble or your soft bubble, or your
compassion bubble.
Passion bubble, whatever works for you.
Exactly. So that's Buddha bubble. So a couple more questions here.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the fear. Okay, so the fear emotions are fear, anxiety, worried, concerned, basically scared and terrified. Experience of how does this work? This is a really cool way to deal with social media and texting. This works. It works on the phone. We all have big social media presences, and you're always going to get this snarky asshole, right? I just affect label. Oh, you don't feel respected. You don't feel heard. You feel really angry and betrayed.
They're not an asshole. They're just hurt.
And they go away.
They do.
They go away instantaneously. And it works with text too, so it's quite effective. Let's see other comments. Yeah,
there was the question about the Buddha bubble, and there are actually 4 stances to hold when you're in the Buddha bubble. Number 1 is
non-reactive.
Number 2,
non-critical. Number
3,
non-judgmental.
Number 4, no fixing.
No fixing or problem solving. So what does it mean? Non-critical means you're not going to criticize. Non-judgmental means you're not going to judge. Non-reactive means that you're not going to be unconsciously react to what somebody says with an emotional statement of your own, like trying to defend yourself. And no fixing or problem solving says you're not going to engage in self-soothing. People jump to problem solving and fixing things as a way of self-soothing their own anxiety. It's just a self-soothing mechanism, and it's totally inappropriate and doesn't work.
And you'll want to start also being very mindful about developing an inner dialogue. And we've been seeding that a bit in tonight's session,
Right.
where when you're in the Buddha bubble and you're listening to your partner or a child say things that might be hurtful, your inner mantra is, that was really hurtful. Wow, that really hurt me. But
You're
they're in worse pain than I am right now. And I need to just be in the Buddha bubble. And it's about them right now. And it's
That's
about
right.
their emotions right now. I have to just put my emotions on pause right now.
It causes you to be an adult.
Yes, it does. It's very maturing.
Very maturing. So yeah, so you take the blows. I mean, one of the things I learned early on as a peacemaker is the peacemaker always takes the first blows. You accept the blows. You just accept it. Sure, bat me over the head. I don't care. I'm here for you. I'm creating a safe space for you to be however you need to be.
And that takes courage, but by embracing your courage, you step into a stance inside yourself that is profoundly fulfilling in every single area of your life and every relationship, especially with the beloved.
Right. So a couple of questions. One, what if I'm not good at reading emotions? It just means you haven't practiced. So here's the easy way to practice reading emotions. You're watching a movie, turn the volume off for 1 minute with a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and write down all the emotions that you see all the actors emoting. And it's going to be a lot. Or another thing I like to do is I don't listen to the radio, but let's say you're somewhere where you're hearing a radio broadcast of some kind. Listen to all the emotions in a 15-second radio spot advertisement. And I guarantee you'll pick up about 10 emotions. They're totally emotional. And all you got to do is pay attention to what are the emotions they're feeling or being expressed in the advertisement. And that will attune you to how to listen to and pay attention to emotion. How do you ignore the words when they're just screaming spittle in your face and accusing you and blaming you and shaming you, and they're really trying to hurt you? Because that's what happens when people get really angry. They want you to hurt more than they do. So they're gonna scream at you. Doesn't matter. You sit there, you're in your Buddha, but you put yourself in the Buddha bubble and you say, oh, you're really angry, you're really frustrated, you're really upset. And you hang in there. Don't give up. For at least 90 seconds, continue to reflect their emotions. They will calm down. They can't help themselves. It's how our brains are hardwired. You just have to have the confidence, which you get with practice by going to Starbucks and the store and everything. You just have to have the confidence that this will work. And you only get the confidence by practicing in low-risk social situations like Starbucks.
And the other thing to just keep in mind is when you're in your intimate relationship with the person that you have fallen in love with, and it might have been decades ago, that relationship is started off as the safest relationship that both of you experienced to some degree. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be together. And because of that safety, whether you feel that safety now or not, you might not feel that safety, but because that safety was there initially, even if it was just for 2 nights, there is this inherent knowing inside ourselves of, I can only process my emotions and my deepest wounds that haven't healed in a safe space. So a lot of the times we are our worst selves with our partner because some part of us is hoping that our partner will hold a safe space for us to process all of these unprocessed emotions.
So let me give another metaphor that I like to use. Think about, this has to do with compassion and how you develop compassion. So you think about holding a baby, and you're holding the baby and loving on the baby, little 1 month old, 2 month old, and all of a sudden the baby lets out a big poop. And you say, oh, baby, it's Cinco. Now, what do you do when the baby poops like that? Do you take the baby and throw it in the sink and beat it and say, bad baby for pooping? Heck no. You say, oh, baby, you pooped. Let me clean you up. And so you take off the diapers and clean the baby up and put on new diapers and put him in a warm new blanket. And now the baby is happy and cooing again. That's compassion. And that's exactly what you're doing in your affect labeling. Somebody's emotionally pooping on you.
Or pooping really on themselves.
Or they're pooping on themselves, but you're the target of it. Or maybe you got 2 people who are pooping on each other. Think of it as emotional poop. And when you're affect labeling, you're doing the same thing with the baby as when you change the diapers. You're holding compassion and you're just being present for them.
And you're not taking responsibility for their poop. You're just validating, we just pooped.
That's right.
You're really upset.
And that's the mindset that you will develop. Now, you won't be able to do this right away because it takes practice. But that is, you will get to that place in a matter of weeks if you're diligent about practicing. All right.
And it's the most soothing skill set to have. So anytime conflict arises, I'm like, oh, thank God I know how to affect label.
right.
It's the best shield ever, but you do it with compassion.
It is life transforming. Now, I've got a lot of single people on here, a couple of couples, which is great. How do you introduce this into a relationship? Very carefully. And the reason that you have to be careful is because your relationship has a set of unspoken rules that you probably don't even know you have. There are all kinds of rules around your relationship, things that you don't talk about, levels of intimacy that you don't go beyond. So there are barriers to intimacy, rules around what you can express, what you can't express, what you can feel, what you can't feel. And since many people come out into relationship wounded as children, so they're going to have the same kind of rules that they grew up with. If you introduce affect labeling too abruptly, you're going to violate all those rules, and your partner is going to feel really, really unsafe. So you have got to do this very carefully. And number one, only do it after you're absolutely confident about your abilities, because you've practiced it in low-risk social situations where
in low-risk situations.
Low-risk social situations
for 3 months.
Where if you make a mistake, you're not going to embarrass yourself. And you really have learned that this works. It's not just Aleya and Doug telling you how wonderful this is, but you've experienced it for yourself. You got to get to that point first. And then you're going to introduce this by simply doing affect labeling as a one-off. You're really frustrated.
And that's it. And
then that's all you say.
You're done.
You stop. You're done and you stop.
And do that once a day.
And see how that goes.
And positive emotions.
Yeah, and positive, with children with positive emotions especially, but with anybody, positive emotions. And you're just slowly going to introduce it into the relationship. And you're not going to make a big deal out of it. It's going to be very nuanced, very subtle, very conversational. And just watch the reaction. If you get a little pushback, stop. Try it again later. And again, be very subtle. Now, here's the challenge. And that is that you can't become a power couple until both of you are willing to do this. So what do you do if you're in a relationship and you know how to affect label and you're really good at it, and your partner really doesn't know what you're doing, and may not be, at least in the beginning, interested in affect labeling, and you have a need to be listened to yourself at this deep level? Well, there are a couple of things you can do. One, after you've done it for a while and you've really you feel good about it and you're comfortable with it, you can say, have you noticed anything different in the way that I've been listening to you? And they'll say, well, yeah, I mean, somehow I feel like you're hearing me a lot deeper. I said, would you like to know what I'm doing? And so you can invite the conversation that way. Another way, if you don't want to, if you don't want to do that, another way that couples have done this is to get my book, De-Escalate, my 4th book, and just say, hey, I just read this book. I think it's really interesting. Would you like to read it? And you can get the audiobook too. Aleya narrated the audiobook, the Audible book on audible.com. And you can introduce it that way. Or third way, of course, is to get one of our courses and develop it that way. I've had couples take the courses together, which can be very effective. But whatever you do, be gentle, because you are now going to create much deeper layers of intimacy that your partner may not be ready for yet. They'll get there, but you just can't dive into the deep end of the pool on the first day and expect it to be effective. You've got to be careful.
And we can absolutely create a list of positive emotions that we'll actually email you for next time.
Yeah, you got the email. Actually, what we'll do is I've got a list of positive and negative. We'll get it out we'll send it out in the email to everybody.
Perfect. So let's complete. And before we complete, Doug, can you just share a very recap, simple practice to do for the next 6 weeks, every single day, that starts slowly bringing in this piece, and then we'll wrap up.
So remember, you're going to ignore the words, read the emotions, reflect back the emotions with a you statement. No questions, no I statements. You're going to practice in really low risk situations. If you've got small children, great. You can practice with them. They love this stuff. They'll eat it up. And
All the time.
it's really good for them. I don't have time to go into the study. Well, let me just say this. If you start affect labeling a child at 2 to 3 years old, by the time they're 12, they're 2 grade levels ahead of their peers. Because it turns out that emotional development and cognitive development are hand in hand. And when emotional development stops, which it usually does at about 6 or 8, cognitive development is impaired. So affect labeling is the best thing you can do for your child.
And it increases impulse control.
It does everything. I get emails from parents all the time saying that they've got 2.5-year-olds, no more tantrums. Tantrums are gone forever. So low risk social situations to perfect strangers, Starbucks baristas, store clerks, restaurant servers. Then you can start doing neighbors. Then you can start doing friends. And then finally you can take it to work and use it with your colleagues, and then slowly bring it home.
But
this
low risk.
If you're not being coached by somebody like me or Aleya on how to do this, and you're doing it DIY, do it yourself, it's a 4 to 6 month process. If you're coached on it, we can accelerate that. But we're not here to promote ourselves. I'm just saying that the learning curve is typically 4 to 6 months if you do it yourself. And you have to be diligent and consistent, and you have to do it 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times a week. So you have to make it a very conscious practice. And then remember the Buddha bubble: non-reactive, non-critical, non-judgmental, no fixing. Put yourself in the Buddha bubble when you're dealing with somebody who's angry or upset. And this is the foundational skill of life. Everything else that we'll be teaching is based on affect labeling. It depends on affect labeling. If you don't have this skill developed, then everything else will help, but will not create the kind of relationship that you all want, which is deep intimacy, trust, and safety.
And again, in the second webinar, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, you're going to be developing the skill sets that will then stand, or rather support, this primary skill set of the affect labeling.
That's right.
And it all goes hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So we've got these 4 support. There are 4 legs. Reporting.
Couple more questions. Why didn't our parents know this? This is very, very new. I developed this out of expediency in a very difficult mediation in 2005. It was first studied in brain scanning and fMRI brain scanning machines in 2007. So it hasn't even been out there for 15 years. It's brand new stuff. Our parents had no clue about this. And so that's why it's brand new. So we can't beat ourselves up. This is new information based on neuroscience, and it's powerful. Is it problematic to use the phrase "you seem"? It's not problematic, but I would prefer that you be direct. You are.
Because it doesn't work as well.
It doesn't work as well. And you don't take our word for it. Go out and try it yourself. So try saying "you are" and try "you seem," and see which one is more effective.
And there's one more. We'll take one more question, and it's: what if both people are upset at the same time?
Oh no, this is a really good one.
And we'll get that one too.
Yeah, we'll get them all. We'll answer all the questions. Let's see. Okay. Can you explain, like in your first example, when you mentioned you were feeling abandoned? It wasn't reflecting back what she had shared. Okay, that's a great question. What you're able to do when you get to a high level is you will see emotions that the other person is having that they don't even know they have. And so I'll say, and you feel abandoned, because I know that's what she's feeling. She doesn't know that she feels abandoned. But that's part of the reason why she's upset, is because she feels abandoned and unloved. And I know that's what's going on. She doesn't feel it. She can't process it. That's part of the reason why she's upset, is because she can't process that emotional experience. So I help her process the emotional experience by telling her what she's feeling. Now she can process it.
And if I'm not emotionally competent, I don't have awareness of my emotions. Even if he says you're feeling abandoned, I'm like, am I? Oh, this is what it feels like when I feel abandoned and unloved.
Right.
Oh, that might take me 3 days to figure that out. But he needs to at least say that to me, and then I start to learn what that feeling is.
Right.
And it's, that's unloved and abandoned.
That goes back to again, deeper teaching about how we construct them. We're not born with emotions. We're born with affect.
Okay,
And
we're not even going to go there. We can't
I
go
know.
there.
Well, there's much more to teach. We're giving you the 50,000-foot view today. What if both people are upset at the same time? Well, once you learn how to do this, you'll never get upset again. So if you got two people who are upset, you got one or both of them do not know how to affect label. Because once you've mastered this, you will never get angry or upset again.
And you start affect labeling yourself. So if
And
you're
you
really
start
upset
affect
and the
yourself.
person is also really upset and they don't know how to affect label
Right.
themselves, then you just walk into another room, walk outside and go, I'm really angry. I'm really upset. I'm really frustrated. Then we're going to tie in the whole process around needs,
Right,
but
exactly.
just do the emotions first.
That's right. That's right. So if you two people are upset at each other, they're not going to be able to affect label.
No.
Because one person neither one of them knows how to do it, and they're just going to escalate their fights. In a much more advanced class, I actually dissect couples arguing with each other.
Oh,
And it is extremely interesting to watch. The patterns are always the same, and it's interesting to see how many missed opportunities there are in these couples fights to stop the fighting. We won't do that in this webinar series because we don't have enough time, but just know that it is possible to analyze couples' arguments and watch them and see how predictable they are and how easy it is to stop the arguing.
okay, one more, then we will complete.
Okay, what if they say, you don't know what I'm feeling? That is the pushback that you get when you've done it too well. They're scared. So they're pushing you away. You don't know what I'm feeling. How dare you? You were absolutely spot on. You did it exactly correctly. You were just probably a little too direct.
Okay, just
And if they keep saying, well, you don't know what I'm feeling. I said, so what's the emotion there? Well, you're angry and frustrated. And you feel like you're losing your autonomy. And you feel invaded. You feel like there's too much intimacy here. And so you just work with their emotions. What if two people are upset with each other? Can you step in as a third? Yeah, that's what I do. I'm a professional mediator. That's exactly what I do. That's why people pay me the big bucks to either do difficult conversations, which I do for people, or I mediate disputes. And I get hired because I'm extremely effective at calming people down so they can solve their problems. And that's what mediation is all about. And that's why I'm trained to do this work.
Where does let's take one more and then we want to honor people's time and we'll complete.
Okay. Or people can drop out if they want. Why not ask them how they're feeling? Because they don't know what they're feeling. What happens is when people get escalated and angry or upset, the emotional centers of the brain activate, and that cuts off the prefrontal cortex. You can't think anymore. How many times have you seen angry people and you say they're acting like 6-year-olds? And in that moment, that's exactly how they're acting. And so when they are emotional, they can't think anymore. They can't choose their behaviors. So they go back to their childhood programming and they act out what they learned as 6-year-olds. And basically it comes down to, I'm going to hurt you more than you're going to hurt me. I'm going to insult you and hurt you. And that's what we see all the time. So once you start affect labeling, you don't have to ask them what they're feeling. You just tell them what they're feeling and you'll be right. And they'll feel deeply validated. Okay. I think that's it. So we will see.
One more question, then we will complete. And that was, where does jealousy come from in a partner? Is it pathological, learned behavior? Can we affect label for the jealousy?
Yes. You can affect label for it. Now, if it is pathological, I mean, if it's a serious problem, then affect labeling will help, but that person may need some clinical help. But you can affect label jealousy, because what is jealousy? Jealousy is fear.
And fear of abandonment.
Fear of abandonment, fear of loss of connection, it's anxiety, could be self-worth, low self-worth.
Fear of betrayal.
Fear of betrayal, not being ignored, not being appreciated, not being supported. See, you just go down the list. You can just, jealousy is all these different things, and you just affect label that, and you'll get a big sigh of relief. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me.
So enjoy, have fun using this skill set, again, in low risk situations. We are going to be creating the links for you to revisit all of this material as much as you wish. And the next session that we are doing is going to be on Thursday, April 27th at 5 o'clock, 5 to 6, 6:15. And again, we'll send out the links for the recording, and thank you all so much for joining us. When you do get the links for the recording, feel free to share it with other people and then just send us their emails, and then we can add them in so that they have the opportunity to join the next 4 free webinars, sharing these tools that help you shift and transform your relationship with yourself and people in your life.
Yeah, hold on. Let me promote. We might as well promote this. So I can see, thank you. A lot of you are in gratitude for what we've done, and thank you for sharing your gratitude with us. Share this with people. We've got a big Zoom room here. We can handle a lot of people. Our goal is to get this out to as many people as possible. Bring in your partners, bring in friends of yours, bring in family members, invite people into this webinar series. They can go back and look at the recording that we'll have so that they can catch up. But the more people we can get in here, the more people we can help change the world. So please, 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 if you loved what we were teaching, then share it with as many people as you can. It's absolutely free. All people have to do is give us an hour and 15 minutes of their time, and we'll change their lives. So please do that for us.
And if you do want to dive a little bit deeper into these concepts, Doug wrote a book, De-Escalate. It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble, anywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
And you can dive deeper into that. Thank you all so much for joining us, for your time, for your questions and your feedback. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.